Okay, so before we dive into today's explainer, let's tackle a really massive assumption right out of the gate. Is development just about making more money? Honestly, if you ask most people on the street, they'd probably say, well, yeah, obviously. They immediately picture skyscrapers, luxury cars, massive bank accounts, that sort of thing. But if you're a class 10 student gearing up for your board exams, you've got to look a bit closer. We really need to challenge that basic assumption. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're breaking down the ideas of development. And to make this the absolute ultimate study guide for you, we're going to frame this entire session around the exact questions and answers you can expect to see on your board exams. Look, I know studying for boards can feel totally overwhelming, but we've translated all these complex concepts into a really clear, direct format that's going to help you completely master this topic. All right, here's our game plan for today. First, what actually is development? Second, measuring progress beyond just money. Third, the Human Development Index. And fourth, sustainability and protecting our future. Let's jump right into section 1, what actually is development? So imagine you're sitting in your exam and you get this highly expected question. Define development, the absolute perfect full mark answer. Development is about improving the quality of life of people. It means living a healthy, educated, and happy life, not just earning a bigger paycheck. Notice how holistic that is? It's not just about economics, it's about the whole shebang, your entire standard of living. You really need to show the examiner that you understand development is a complete package. Now, a super common follow-up to that is, what are the main features of development? To lock in those marks, you've got to list these elements out. We're talking better education, good health, and solid employment opportunities. And yeah, higher income is definitely on the list, but it sits right alongside having a safe environment, equal rights, and better transport and communication. If you can just visualize this checklist during your exam, you can easily expand these points into a brilliant, high-scoring paragraph. You also might get a question like, why do different people have different developmental goals? Think about it like this. Picture a factory owner. Their primary goal? More profit and building new factories. That is development to them. But contrast that with a local farmer living nearby. They want clean air, safe water, and good irrigation facilities. Everyone has entirely different jobs, lifestyles, and dreams. And sometimes one person's development becomes another person's problem. Building a massive factory creates jobs, sure, but it might completely pollute the local farmer's water supply. True development actually has to balance these competing needs. All right, shifting gears a bit to section 2, measuring progress beyond money. If a quick 2-mark question asks, how is per capita income calculated, you absolutely must have this exact formula locked in. It's per capita income equals total national income divided by total population. It's just a simple math equation, really, but it is a profoundly important foundational concept in economics. Governments use it all the time to measure the average income earned per person in any given country. Now, this is a classic long answer question. You'll likely be asked to evaluate the limitations of per capita income. Obviously, it's important, right? It helps compare different countries, shows average income, and governments rely on it for planning. But its limitations are completely glaring. It entirely hides income inequality. It just totally ignores crucial real-world factors like health, education, overall happiness, and environmental quality. Two countries could technically have the exact same per capita income on paper, but one could have completely failing schools and terrible hospitals. Actually, let me just ask you point blank. Would you rather live in a super rich but highly polluted area, or maybe a middle income area but it has great schools, amazing hospitals, and crystal clean water? We both know the answer to that, for sure. A wealthy person living in a toxic environment doesn't actually have a good quality of life. And this just proves that income alone isn't nearly enough to measure a good life. We need something more. We need public facilities. So an exam question might ask, why are public facilities essential for development? Well, it's because they provide shared services that boost our standard of living way more effectively than individual wealth ever could on its own. I mean, you can't just buy a private clean atmosphere, right? Public facilities improve health through hospitals and sanitation, they promote education through government schools, and they create equal opportunities for everyone. Basic things like roads and electricity support economic growth, and at the end of the day, actively reduce poverty. Which brings us perfectly to Section 3, the Human Development Index. Here's a staple exam question. What is the Human Development Index? Introduced by the United Nations Development Program, or the UNDP, the HDI is the ultimate tool that evaluates the overall development of a country way beyond just money. It's a vastly better measure because it gives governments a complete, realistic picture of how their citizens are actually living day to day. It encourages them to focus on improving so much more than just their GDP. To answer how the Human Development Index is calculated, you're going to want to burn these three exact pillars into your memory. First up is health, which is measured by life expectancy. Second is education, measured by years of schooling and overall literacy. And third is income, measured by gross national income per person. By combining health, education, and income, the HDI firmly proves that true development has to include social, economic, and human well-being all at once. And finally, we arrive at Section 4, Sustainability, Protecting Our Future. If you're asked to define sustainable development, please use this exact phrasing: meeting present needs without harming the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Why is this literally the most important topic right now? Because our natural resources are strictly limited. Pollution is spiking, forests are disappearing, and climate change is a very pressing reality. We can't just consume everything today and leave absolutely nothing for tomorrow. Examiners really love to ask if economic growth and environmental protection can actually coexist. The answer is absolutely yes. Economic growth creates jobs, builds industries, and raises our incomes, while environmental protection makes sure we're using clean energy, saving our forests, and effectively controlling waste. Real development requires these two to work together, like pieces of a giant puzzle. They shouldn't be competing against each other. Think about it. If industries pollute all the rivers, people lose their health and their livelihoods anyway, right? A great practical question is, how can we achieve sustainable development? Your answer here needs to be super actionable. We need to plant more trees, save water, switch to renewable energy, drastically reduce pollution, recycle our waste, and protect wildlife. Presenting this clear, straightforward list is going to score you maximum points because it shows you have a direct understanding of how to actively balance economic growth with environmental protection. Okay, let's bring it all together with a quick, rapid-fire summary of the ultimate characteristics of actual progress. Good development simply must be inclusive. It has to be sustainable. It must be equal, environment-friendly, and above all else, it has to be people-centered. I want to give you a secret weapon for your exams. If you are writing a long-answer essay, this is the perfect, high-scoring concluding sentence. The ultimate goal of development is to ensure that every person enjoys a healthy, educated, safe, and dignified life. It just perfectly captures the absolute essence of everything we've been talking about today. So, as you close your textbooks and eventually step out into the real world, I want you to ask yourself, knowing all of this, how will you apply these true ideas of development to actually build a better future? Because honestly, exam preparation isn't just about memorizing a bunch of facts. It's about deeply understanding the very world you are going to shape. Thank you so much for joining this explainer, and best of luck applying these concepts both on your exam paper and out there in your life.